The first time I saw her, she was standing quietly in the lobby of our building, clutching a leather folder to her chest. The receptionist was trying her best, waving hands around in frustration, raising her voice as if volume alone could bridge the silence. People walked past, glancing, then averting their eyes. No one wanted to be caught in the awkwardness. I don't know what made me stop. Maybe it was the way she stood so patiently, like she was used to being left out of conversations. Or maybe it was because years earlier, my sister had taught me a few signs when she volunteered at a community center. Most of those words had slipped away over time, but one had stayed with me: welcome. So I walked up, smiled, and slowly signed that single word. My hand moved a little stiffly, not elegant, but enough. Her face lit up in a way I'll never forget. Relief washed over her features, and her shoulders dropped as though the whole weight of the lobby had been pressing on her. She tapped her folder, pointed upstairs, and I nodded, guiding her toward the elevator. I didn't even know her name. The whole exchange lasted less than a minute, but something about it clung to me. Like a tiny thread had been tied between us, fragile but undeniable. 2 days later, my phone buzzed. An email from the CEO's assistant. He would like to see you in his office this afternoon. I'd been at the company less than a year. I wasn't senior management. I wasn't even mid-level. My job was safe but invisible. The kind of role where you keep your head down and avoid unnecessary attention. As I rode the elevator up to the top floor, my mind raced with possibilities. Had I made a mistake in one of my reports? Was this about the guest in the lobby? Was I in trouble, or about to be recognized? By the time the elevator chimed, my palms were damp, my heart was pounding, and one question echoed louder than the rest. What exactly did my small gesture set in motion? Because sometimes the smallest sign carries the greatest weight. I have to admit, my job was never glamorous. I worked in operations, tucked away in spreadsheets, invoices, and logistics. Most days, I was invisible to the decision-makers upstairs. The CEO, Mr. Harrington, was a figure I'd only seen from a distance, surrounded by directors and executives who seemed to orbit him like satellites. I liked it that way. My world was steady, predictable. I clocked in, kept things running smoothly, and clocked out. There was comfort in being unnoticed. Attention in my mind meant exposure, and exposure meant risk. Still, the company culture was peculiar. Harrington valued appearances. He wanted every employee polished, precise, professional. The lobby, with its marble floors and glass walls, wasn't just an entrance, it was a stage. Visitors were meant to be impressed, reassured they'd stepped into a place of order and status. That's why the moment with the guest lingered in my mind. She had broken the script without even meaning to. Everyone else pretended not to see her struggle. I had broken rank by stepping in. And yet, I couldn't regret it. That single sign, welcome, hadn't cost me anything. But it had meant something to her. I replayed her smile in my head whenever I doubted myself. The irony? I didn't even know who she was. I assumed she was a vendor, or maybe an architect meeting with the design team. Certainly not someone who would ripple into my world again. But the summons from Harrington's office told me otherwise. His office wasn't a place for casual chats. People went in with anxious faces, came out with forced smiles, or boxes packed with their belongings. As I sat at my desk that morning, staring at the clock hands dragging toward the appointed hour, a knot twisted tighter in my stomach. Why me? Why now? And then, as if fate wanted to sharpen the suspense, I noticed something on my desk I hadn't placed there. A small white envelope, unmarked, with a single folded slip inside. On it, written in careful block letters, was one word: thank you. The handwriting was neat but unfamiliar. No signature. Just those 2 words. I stared at it, feeling the ground under my ordinary life shift ever so slightly. Sometimes gratitude whispers louder than accusation. By the time I reached the top floor, I had convinced myself this was about performance. Maybe a misfiled contract. Maybe a missed deadline. Something measurable, something ordinary. My heart still pounded, but I rehearsed polite apologies in my head, ready to accept responsibility. The CEO's assistant, impeccably dressed, gave me a thin smile and ushered me into his office. The space was larger than some apartments I'd lived in, floor-to-ceiling windows, shelves lined with hardcovers no one had ever read, a grand desk that seemed designed to intimidate. And there he was, Mr. Harrington. Sharp suit, silver hair, eyes that didn't blink as often as they should. He didn't rise to greet me. He simply gestured toward the chair opposite him. "You helped a guest in the lobby 2 days ago," he began. His voice was low, deliberate. Not angry, not warm. Just measuring. I swallowed. "Yes, sir." "She seemed deaf," he interrupted. "Yes, I am aware." He leaned back, steepling his fingers. "Do you know who she was?" I shook my head. He let the silence stretch long enough for me to hear my pulse in my ears. "Then, that was my sister." The words hit me like cold water. His sister? The CEO's sister? The mysterious guest clutching the folder? "She doesn't visit often," he continued. "When she does, I prefer things to run smoothly. She notices details. And she speaks very highly of you." I blinked. "Of me?" His eyes narrowed slightly, as though testing whether I was truly surprised. "She told me you welcomed her. In her language. That is not something I require of my staff. But I do require something else." He leaned forward now, elbows on the desk. "Integrity. Discretion. A certain strength of character. And my sister believes you may have it." I sat frozen, unsure whether this was praise or a prelude to dismissal. So he laid it out. I was being tested. For the next week, without warning, small tasks and unusual requests would come my way. Some would be inconvenient. Some would seem pointless. But he and his sister would be watching. "Understand this," he said. "Many people here are clever. Many are ambitious. Few are kind. Show me which one you are." The air in that office felt heavy, but my mind was sharper than ever. This was no longer about spreadsheets. It was about something deeper, something I couldn't yet name. And I realized, with a quiet jolt, that I had just been drafted into a game where the rules weren't mine to set. The smallest acts can become the largest tests. The first test arrived the very next morning. At least, I think it did. That was the tricky part. Nothing came labeled. Nothing announced itself as a trial. But something in me stayed alert, scanning for the unusual, for the things that didn't fit. I was walking past the break room when I noticed a custodian struggling with a vending machine. A bag of chips had snagged, dangling just out of reach. Several employees walked by, without a glance. Normally, I might have done the same, chalk it up to bad luck, not my problem. But today? I stopped, slid a few coins in, and pressed the button again. The chips tumbled down. The man gave me a tired smile. Coincidence? Maybe. But the flicker in his eyes reminded me of Harrington's words. "Few are kind." Later, an email landed in my inbox. Not from my manager. Not from any department I recognized. Just a short line. "Please deliver this file to conference room B at 2:15 sharp." No explanation, no signature. I debated ignoring it. It smelled like a prank. But something in me said otherwise. At 2:15 exactly, I carried the folder to conference room B. Inside, a woman I'd never seen before was waiting. She looked up, startled, then smiled. "Perfect timing," she said, as if I had solved a puzzle without knowing the rules. And then there was the sandwich. I'd brought my lunch to the park across the street, as I often did to escape the fluorescent hum of the office. That day, a man in worn clothes sat near me on the bench. He didn't ask for food, didn't even look at me directly. But I remembered Harrington's phrase, "She notices details." Quietly, I split my sandwich in two, offered half with a nod. His gratitude was silent, but it filled the air between us. Each of these moments seemed small, insignificant, yet they formed a pattern, tiny puzzles scattered through my days. Someone was placing them in front of me. Someone was watching how I responded. By the third day, I no longer doubted it. I wasn't imagining things. The envelope on my desk, the mysterious emails, the odd timing of strangers who weren't really strangers. I had stepped into a maze where kindness was the compass, but the path forward was still hidden. And the question gnawed at me. How far would this game go? Because sometimes life tests us not with obstacles, but with choices we could easily ignore. It was on the fourth day that the pattern finally broke wide open. I had been called into yet another unofficial errand, this time to deliver a sealed envelope to the mailroom. The request came through the same cryptic style: no sender, no explanation. By now, I had stopped questioning. I just obeyed, trusting that every strange task was part of the invisible exam. But as I stepped into the elevator, I wasn't alone. She was there, the guest from the lobby, the CEO's sister, the woman whose smile had lit up when I signed welcome. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she reached into her handbag and pulled out a notepad. On it, she had written, "You see more than others do." I blinked, unsure how to respond. She turned the page. "That is why I chose you." My throat tightened. Chose me? This wasn't just Harrington's test, it was hers. She was the architect of these puzzles. She scribbled again, her pen moving quickly. "My brother does not trust easily. He measures people by what they achieve. I measure them by what they give." I nodded slowly, the pieces snapping into place. The errands, the strangers, the quiet opportunities for kindness, they weren't random. They were her design. She was watching me not for efficiency or ambition, but for heart. Then she wrote one last line before the doors opened: "Don't change, even if it costs you." She slipped the notepad away and stepped out, leaving me with a pulse of clarity pounding in my chest. This wasn't just about promotion or recognition or survival. It was about being seen, not for my role but for my choices. The real revelation wasn't that I was being tested. It was that the test had nothing to do with numbers or titles. It was about whether I would stay true to myself when no one else seemed to care. And yet, as I clutched the sealed envelope tighter, one uneasy thought lingered. What if the next puzzle asked me to choose between kindness and my career? Because sometimes the midpoint of a journey is the moment you realize the stakes are much higher than you ever imagined. From that moment on, every task carried more weight. Every interaction felt sharpened, as though invisible eyes tracked my smallest choices. The tests grew trickier. One afternoon, a junior colleague slipped into my office, panic written across her face. She had miscalculated an order, and if it wasn't corrected, a client would receive the wrong shipment. Her voice shook. "Please don't tell the manager. I'll fix it tonight." I looked at her screen. It was indeed her error, but it was also my chance. If I reported it, I could look competent, dependable. If I covered for her, I risked being blamed if the fix failed. I remembered the sister's words: "Don't change, even if it costs you." So I stayed late with her. We fixed the error together, line by painstaking line. She never forgot. The next day, another curveball. I received an email inviting me to a networking lunch with senior executives. It sounded flattering, but when I checked with HR, they had no record of it. A trap? Or another test? I declined politely, choosing instead to eat my usual sandwich at the park. And there, on the same weathered bench, I noticed the man again, the one I'd shared food with earlier. Only this time, he wasn't alone. A little girl sat beside him, her shoes scuffed, her hair in uneven braids. He broke my sandwich in half and gave her a piece before taking a bite himself. The sight stopped me cold. My small gesture had multiplied, passed along like a secret thread of kindness. But the real complication arrived on Friday. Harrington himself appeared at my desk, startling everyone nearby. He set down a folder and said, "Take this to my sister. Directly. Do not open it." His tone was stern, absolute. But as soon as I held the folder, I noticed it wasn't sealed properly. A corner had come loose, and through the gap, I could see papers marked with bold red ink. Numbers. Accounts. Discrepancies. My stomach tightened. This wasn't just an errand, it was temptation. Do I peek, risk betraying his trust, but learn what game I was really caught in? Or do I obey and deliver it blind? That folder burned in my hands like a moral riddle. Every instinct told me this was the moment that could define everything. Because sometimes the hardest tests aren't about what you do in public, but what you choose when no one will ever know. I carried that folder like it was a live wire. The weight of it seemed heavier than paper. The elevator ride to the top floor felt endless, every floor a reminder that I could still turn back. When I reached the corridor outside her office, I stopped. My pulse thundered. That loose corner of the folder called to me like a whisper. Look, just a glance. I wrestled with it. Curiosity against integrity. Fear against trust. The temptation was so strong my hands trembled. And then I remembered the park bench. The way the man had broken my sandwich in two for his daughter. He had known I would see it. He had passed on the kindness simply because it was right. That was my compass. So I pressed the folder flat, smoothing the loose flap, and knocked gently. She opened the door herself. No assistant, no pretense. Just her, with the same quiet poise I'd seen in the lobby. I handed her the folder without a word. Her eyes searched mine, as if she could read the battle I'd just fought. Slowly, she nodded. But before I could leave, the door behind me opened. Harrington stepped in. His timing was too precise to be coincidence. Did you look? He asked, his voice calm but razor-sharp. My mouth went dry. No, sir. He studied me in silence, then glanced at his sister, who gave the faintest smile. Do you know what was inside? He pressed. I shook my head. Good, he said almost to himself, because those papers weren't real. They were placed there for one reason only, to see if temptation outweighed discretion. My chest loosened, but only slightly. He wasn't done. You've passed farther than most ever do, he said. But understand, trust isn't proven by a single choice. It's proven by consistency, by whether you stand firm when the ground shifts beneath you. He leaned closer, his silver hair catching the light. The final test will come when you least expect it, and it will cost you something you value. I left that office shaken, adrenaline still coursing through me. The game wasn't over, it was only sharpening. And I couldn't stop wondering, what would the final test demand of me? Because sometimes integrity isn't measured by what we gain, but by what we're willing to lose. The final test, as Harrington had called it, came sooner than I expected. And it came disguised, as all the others had. It was Monday morning. The office buzzed with its usual urgency, phones ringing, keyboards clattering, managers pacing. I was reviewing shipments when a message flashed across my screen. Report to conference room A immediately. Bring your laptop. I hurried there, uncertain, and found myself stepping into a room packed with executives. At the head of the table sat Harrington. His sister was there too, silent, watchful. The CEO gestured to the only empty chair. Sit. Once I did, he slid a document toward me. We've been monitoring certain accounts, he said. There are discrepancies. Large ones. We need you to confirm who is responsible. I scanned the file. My stomach dropped. The errors were familiar. They belonged to the junior colleague I had helped earlier in the week, the one who had begged me not to tell. Every eye in the room was on me. Harrington's voice cut through the silence. You can be honest here. Who caused these mistakes? My colleague wasn't present to defend herself. She had no idea this was happening. I realized with a jolt that this was the cost Harrington had warned me about. My word could end her career. I felt the room tighten, executives ready to pounce on any sign of weakness. I looked at the sister. She didn't move, but her gaze reminded me of her note. Don't change, even if it costs you. So I spoke, carefully, firmly. The errors weren't sabotage, I said. They were mistakes. Human mistakes. I caught them, and I helped correct them. If you want to know who fixed the problem, you're looking at them. But if you want someone to punish, then punish me too. Because I chose to stand with her. A hush fell over the table. Harrington's eyes narrowed, but his sister's expression softened, almost proud. Then the CEO leaned back, steepling his fingers again. Interesting, he said. Most protect themselves. Few protect others. He stood, closing the file. You've passed. The tension broke like a dam. I exhaled, realizing my hands had been clenched the whole time. Harrington explained that the discrepancies were fabricated. The numbers weren't real. The entire scenario was the last test, a crucible to see whether I valued self-preservation over loyalty, integrity over ambition. His sister smiled at me, her eyes shining with quiet affirmation. And in that moment, I understood. It had never been about rising in the company. It had been about revealing who I already was. Sometimes the true promotion isn't a title, it's the legacy you carry and how you choose to stand. Life after that week didn't return to normal. Not exactly. Harrington never offered me a grand title, and I didn't suddenly move into a corner office. But he did something I hadn't expected. He trusted me. My role shifted quietly, subtly. He asked for my input on matters far beyond my job description. He invited me to meetings that others at my level never saw. Not as a reward, but as a responsibility. And his sister? She became more than a mystery in the lobby. Sometimes I'd find a folded note on my desk, short messages in her precise handwriting. A word of encouragement. A proverb. Once, simply, keep breaking the sandwich. Each one felt like a thread weaving a bond between us, a reminder that small acts ripple further than we think. The junior colleague I had defended never knew the full story. She only knew I hadn't exposed her mistake. Months later, she came to me, eyes shining, to say she'd been promoted. "I'll never forget how you stood by me," she whispered. That mattered more than any recognition from above. Looking back, the strangest part is how little I had to do to change everything. One small sign in the lobby. One half of a sandwich on a park bench. One choice to protect someone instead of sacrificing them. None of it felt heroic at the time. But together, they became the measure of my character. We often imagine life's defining moments arrive with trumpets and headlines. But more often, they arrive quietly, disguised as inconveniences or temptations. The real test isn't whether we notice them, it's whether we choose kindness when no one demands it. And if you take anything from my story, let it be this: don't underestimate the power of your smallest gestures. You never know who is watching. You never know how far a single act of welcome might carry. Because in the end, integrity isn't a performance. It's a legacy.